So I just watched this very eye-opening documentary, which I'll put the link where you can watch the whole thing in the description. Um, I couldn't get sound unless I used the whole extension because I'm in Canada, so sometimes I can't watch the same sort of thing. But if you need to change your proxy server to being in the States, just get Hola. It works fantastically. Anyways, on to my actual point. So it's basically about how slavery didn't end at the end of the Civil War in the States. It continued for another 80 years minimum. That's when actual acts started to be put in place to actually, stop people from doing slavery, pretty much. But the thing is that it didn't really fully ever stop, because like the post that I found it from explained other ways that it's still continuing. The same sort of things that allowed slavery to continue is still happening today in the States, which is horrifying because it's been what, like almost 150 years since this shit was supposed to have ended, and it's still going on. And basically how it was happening was basically is that they would arrest black people and then put the prisoners into slave work far worse than the conditions that actual slaves had before the Civil War. And before you say, well, they were criminals, 90% of them. And do you know what they were getting arrested for? Walking too close to the train tracks, loitering, come on, or talking too loud near a woman, for all these ridiculous, stupid things and they could be accused of doing something that the person has no proof of, and they would still get put into a prison sentence. And minor things like talking too loud near a woman or some other bullshit like that, or not getting sufficiently out of the way of a white person walking down the street, which, I mean, sometimes you can't because there's only so much street, right? Like, they would be put in jail, and it would be go from a minor, offense to a whole fucking felony. And even if you were only in the slave system for the slave prisoner system for a few months, you could end up just losing your life from that because the conditions were awful. Because the thing is when you had slaves back then, it was an investment, so you couldn't treat them so badly that they couldn't work anymore, or you couldn't give them conditions in which they would die because that was just too expensive to do. So you had to give them living conditions in which they could survive so you could get the most out of your investment. But with prisoners, you only had them for a few months or a few years or whatever. Anyways, and there was an endless supply of more. So you could treat them as badly as you wanted. You could put them in conditions where it's so awful that people are getting sick and dying like every other day. You could whip them to the point of death. You could, freaking starve them or force them to drink freaking pond water and all this other crap because they were prisoners. It didn't matter. They don't have any human rights. And then there was the whole peonage, which was illegal, by the way. Peonage is basically that you owe someone something, and then they could basically, you become their slave because to pay it off. But the thing is that people would become slaves under peonage when they never actually owed the person something in the first place. And this is how a lot of these slave owners got away with it. Is like, well, they didn't actually owe me anything. I was owning them for 18 fucking months and treating them like shit, under the false claim that they owed me something, but they never did, so they didn't get in trouble. Because while slavery was illegal, it wasn't illegal to own slaves. You couldn't actually be put to jail for owning slaves until, again, with that thing I mentioned, that the 80 years later, that it actually became, if you were found of forcing someone into labor for any reason against their will and all this other stuff, that's what I mean, like, slavery didn't really even begin to end until 80 years later. Like, yeah, that's fucked up. And that was towards the end of World War II. So yeah, I guess it has been 150 years or more actually since Civil War. I'm bad at math. Sorry. Anyways, ow. Okay. Anyways, but the reason why I say that stuff is still in place today is because that ridiculously high percentage of prisoners being black is still something we see today. Because if a white person does a crime, they're far less likely to do time for it than if a black person does a crime of lesser importance. Like, a black person could be jaywalking and they might see jail time, whereas a white person could be jaywalking and they won't even get a ticket. First of all, I'm in Canada, so that's not actually a law here. Jaywalking, it's not illegal. You can walk across the street anywhere and anyone, and if a car hits you, the car driver gets in trouble. So jaywalking is not even a little bit illegal here, and I never understood the law of jaywalking. I mean, you're walking across the street. How the fuck is that illegal? I can understand that, it's dangerous, but people could get in trouble for walking down a street that hasn't seen a car in an hour and won't see a car again for another hour. That's not fucking dangerous. That's just walking somewhere. Like, come on. So, I never understood that law personally. Like, it should be the driver who's driving this huge piece of machinery responsibility to keep an eye on the road, right? Anyways, moving on. And the whole drug war is a huge example of this. Is that, especially when it comes to drugs, you know, if a black person has like a gram of weed on them, they could see a year of jail time. Even if a white person is caught smoking weed with a whole freaking pack of cocaine in their pocket, they'll get a slap on the wrist, essentially, like a fine maybe, or something like that. So there is definitely racism in the judicial system, and then the fact that the cops can fucking murder black kids without any actual just cause, especially when you compare how they treat legit homicidal maniacs who are white. Sorry. And the thing is also terrifying is the fact is child criminals who aren't going to juvie and they aren't serving child whatever, and I mean by child I mean minor, so anyone under 18, but they're actually getting adult treatment and as young as 8 years old. Now this wasn't in that documentary. I found it was a different one. I'll try to find that one. I think I saved it in my socio vids bookmark, but anyways. But the fact that a child could do something as minor as shoplifting and they'll end up getting tried as an adult. Like, that's fucked up as shit. Like, I understand trying a minor as an adult for killing someone or, like, something extremely heinous like that. Okay, yeah, charge them as an adult because obviously they're doing adult crimes. But if a kid steals a pack of gum, they don't deserve to have their entire life ruined, because the thing is, if a child is tried as an adult, they don't get their records wiped at 18. That crime stays with them for their whole life. So say some kid gets pressured into shoplifting, which happens all the fucking time, or they just really wanted the gum. They wanted to see if they could get away with it. So they grabbed a pack of gum from a convenience store, and they get caught, and they get arrested, and they get tried as an adult. They're screwed for the rest of their life, because it's next to impossible to find meaningful work once you have a criminal record on criminal offense on your record. And the thing is, too, is that juvie is oriented in rehabilitation, whereas prison is oriented in punishment. So you get this kid with a minor offense, and you punish the fuck out of this kid instead of trying to make them a productive member of society. Because the thing is that prisoners and arresting everyone and not trying to rehabilitate them is a drain on society, because it costs so much more to have prisoners than it is to have active members of society. And, sorry. And the thing is that, the reason why it happens in the first place is just that the juvie system is overwhelmed and underfunded. So sometimes the overflow has to go to the prison system, to the adult system. But an overwhelming amount of the cases that end up being tried as an adult are black kids, POC, people of color in general, so anyone who's not white basically, but for the mass majority it's black kids. So you could get like little Jimmy, who's white, who fucking robbed a house or beat up an old lady, getting to juvie, and then little Tyrone, who's black, who stole a pack of gum, and he's going to prison. Like, that is fucked up as shit. And then the way everything's orchestrated in the States, so that, like I mentioned, you go to prison once, you're screwed for the rest of your life. You can't get a job, and it's just basically that whole system of you can't get meaningful work. The best you can get is minimum wage, which has been proven is not living wage. If you're on minimum wage, you need welfare to survive. You are working 60 hours a week sometimes, and you still don't have enough money to make it. Do you know that 40% of the homeless population have full-time employment? 40% of the homeless population has full-time employment. I'm sorry, but if you are working full-time, you should not be homeless. You should be able to afford a place to fucking live. So, that's fucked up as shit. That's why I think the minimum wage really needs to be raised. And the fact that the only jobs that are willing to hire felons or people who have been to prison tend to be minimum wage jobs. And even then, it's only a few of them. So, basically, you're creating a system of causing black people unable to succeed, especially, but just people in general unable to get out of poverty, and becoming a huge drain on society when they really don't want to. And they're working their asses off. They're working harder than people who are in the upper class to not even be able to survive. Like, do you realize how fucked up your system is in the States? Like, it claims to be this pinnacle of society, that you're the freest you can be in the States, and it's the best place to live in the entire world, and all this other stuff, and they have so much pride in themselves, when in actual reality, they're worse than a lot of third world countries. It's supposed to be a pinnacle of society in their view, but they are worse than developing countries, which are supposed to be seen as the bottom of the barrel, which is not even fucking true when you compare the amount of rights you have, the quality of healthcare, and how easy it is to be able to go to work, and have a place to fucking live. Countries that are war-stricken sometimes are fucking better than the States in some ways. All these Muslim countries that they claim are like awful, blah blah blah. Women have far more rights and a higher percentage in population and everything else, and criminals are better rehabilitated than in the fucking States. Like, oh my god, it's fucking awful. And Canada, thanks to fucking Harper, is starting to get towards that level, and yet none of my fucking conservative asshole family will listen to me and saying, look how freaking awful Harper is for Canada. They're trying to turn Canada into the States. That's what he's trying to do. So the world's fucked up, and thanks for watching.